Hi, I'm Kaytlyn,
And I'm Brianna.
and welcome to the Readers Clubhouse, where we revisit our childhood favorite content. Brianna, I have a question for you today.
Yes.
If you were going to have an animal army, what would that animal army consist of?
Oh, dang. It's a good question. Um, this is really silly, but probably bears.
Okay, tell me more.
They're big. I don't need as many of them. But they can still be considered an army. Um, and I feel like they could get stuff done.
Okay,
Just taking out enemies and everything.
I
They're
see, I
also,
see.
depending on the type of bear, they're really hard to take down anyway with just like weapons and stuff. So that's
Okay,
my thought.
yeah,
Also
no,
for
fair.
aerial support, probably like a hawk or an owl or something, depending on the time of day.
For aerial support, she says.
Yes.
I love that. I love that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
wow. Even though I asked the question, I hadn't actually figured an answer.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, dare I say, probably wolves.
Mm,
Because the thing about wolves is they hunt well in groups. Um, Also, they're, I don't remember what the term is, but they're like long distance predator, which just means they'll stalk their prey over long distances and they
mm,
don't have to. So there's um some of the big cats like will like stalk up to something and then jump. So they're not necessarily long distance like um I don't know, I'm thinking of like the difference between a sprinter versus like a marathon runner,
yeah.
and it's different skills, different like training as well. So wolves are more of like marathon predators, where something like a cheetah or whatever is a sprinting predator. The cheetah can't go as fast as it can go for long periods of time. Um, so I'd probably want to have wolves because again, they work in packs to take down their prey. And
Yeah.
so it's not just sort of one off. Um, and then I like that you said aerial support. Um, yeah, I mean, like a peregrine falcon. I've always loved those ever since I read.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what is it? My Side of the Mountain.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You remember that? Yeah,
Pulling from deep within my childhood.
yeah. That one and Hatchet were
Yes, yeah.
very formative to me for some reason.
Absolutely. Same that any of those like kids surviving the wilderness with a pet, well, not a
Yep,
pet, a wild animal that becomes a best friend basically,
yep,
ate those things up.
same. I mean, they were so
Yeah.
good. I remember them. We should talk about those one day.
One day.
That'd be cool. One day,
Add it to the list.
add it to the list. Um, Great, Brianna. We That was a relevant question because in this book we have an
Yeah.
animal army.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to go into the book
Absolutely.
stats?
Oh, absolutely. So we are back with Robin McKinley again with The Hero and the Crown. That is the book we're talking about today. And some of you who listened to our last episode are already kind of aware of this, since The Blue Sword, which was the book we talked about in our previous episode, is the this is the prequel book to that book, is what it is. So this book is set like 500 years before Harry and Corlath's story. And so we're getting a view into the legendary Aerin, the fire hair, dragon killer, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to kind of see her story. So this was released 2 years after The Blue Sword,
Mm,
1984, it looks like. And then it's still a fantasy genre. It's still kind of considered middle grade by a lot of people, though this has darker tones. This actually
yeah.
kind of, I think, does fit more into a young adult um, than even Blue Sword did in a lot of ways. There's a lot of elements of darkness, essentially. And I'm not talking about
Mm,
like the dark. I'm talking about like I feel like actually we deal with a lot more mental health stuff in this
yeah,
one.
definitely.
People dealing with depression, even though it's not actually talked about. It definitely is something that those characters are dealing with. Weird magic that like makes you feel like crazy and everything. It's just a lot of
Yeah,
stuff. A lot of stuff. And so that's kind of our stats for this. Caitlin, are you ready for my summary?
absolutely. I totally am.
I'm glad you're ready. All right. Okay, I'm ready now.
I love the deep sigh that you have to take before you do this.
I gotta get it out. Hundreds of years before Harry Crewe set foot in the Damarian Hills, Aerin was the daughter of the king and a foreign woman that died giving birth to her. We see a young Aerin grow up in an environment that is largely hostile to her presence, or at the very least put off by it. She is very much unlike the other royals, and has a different appearance as well. During her formative years, she tries to find her place, and only begins to find some purpose after she makes a fatal error in eating a poisonous plant, goaded by a hateful cousin, that causes her to become an invalid for many seasons. During this time, she makes friends with her father's old warhorse, Talat, who had been injured gravely in a battle some years before, and has grown bitter over time. But she wins him over and begins to learn things like horsemanship and swordmanship in secret. She also finds the vague recipe for a fire repellent of sorts, but she wins him over and begins to learn things like horsemanship and swordmanship in secret. She also finds the vague recipe for a fire repellent of sorts that is meant to repel dragon fire. After years of trial and error, she's able to perfect it and test it out finally in her first fight against two dragons. Mind you, these are not great hulking beasts, but almost lizards that are more of a plague upon the land. True dragons have been gone for a long time. She succeeds against them by the skin of her teeth. Her father accepts this new role as dragon killer, but when the country starts to grow restless, he will not take her with him to meet it. The North stirs against Damar again, and Damar does not have its crown, the hero's crown, that would protect it from the North's machinations. As the king rides out to meet one of these things that come against Damar, dire news comes. A true dragon, Mara the Black Dragon, has awoken and seeks to raise the land. The king cannot face two fronts and chooses the one he knows he can deal with first, the threat of civil war, hoping to deal with Mara afterward. But Aerin has trained for this and sets off on her own. She and Talat prepare for battle and then head directly into the Dragon's Valley. It is a hard battle. The fire ointment does little to help against the true dragon, and Aerin is maimed, but is finally able to kill him by stabbing him through his eye. She is badly wounded and barely makes her way out of the valley again. Her father and Tor, her childhood friend and future king, find her, and they know she is not well. After not getting better, she has visions of a blonde man calling her. Whoa. A blonde man calling her, and she finally heeds his call as she feels that she may not live much longer. The blonde man is Luth. Yes, that Luth. And he is able to heal her, but also turns her into something not fully human anymore. After a time, he explains that she is meant to kill the man that is turning the North to Damar, and that man is her uncle. She gives her Gaunterun, the blue sword, to help her hopefully succeed in this task. She sets out again and makes her way to his black keep. Along the way, a group of wildcats and then wild dogs join her. Arriving at the tower, she finds another hard battle, one that is fought not just with swords but magic as well, for her uncle is a great mage and has the hero's crown. She is again able to succeed with a lot of help from Gaunterun and makes her way back through both time and distance to her small army. They head back and are greeted by Luth, who helped her come back through time, and they travel back to his mountain together, both realizing that they love one another. But Aerin knows that another part of her has to go back home and save her people, and give her father or Tor the crown. They part bittersweetly, knowing that it will be a long time before they see each other again, but it will not be forever. She heads home and finds a battlefield. With Talat, the animals, and Gaunterun, she helps turn the tides against the Northerners and gives the crown to Tor. Much else occurs between then and the end, as her father dies and Maur's not fully gone as he should be, but Aerin and Tor are able to conquer them all and get married and live out their reign together. Because Aerin loved Tor as well and knew she was needed there for the time being.
Nice.
Thank you.
Um, Brianna,
Caitlin.
do you have any thoughts about the book?
Um, so something I want to clarify with people, we talked about in the last one, The Blue Sword was a very pivotal book in my childhood. And it was a while though before I read this one, so this one doesn't quite hold the same place in my heart, I guess you
Right.
could say, as this one, as the Blue Sword did.
Okay.
So just like clarifying that. But it was very interesting. It's very interesting reading this. And there's like things I remembered, honestly, because this also stuck out in my head. Like there's like things that I remembered, especially the last bit, some of the last bits, like her and the animals, and then her and Tor
Mm,
at the end and stuff. And so it's like I still was like having like pretty strong feelings going into the last bit, which
okay.
surprised me, honestly.
Yeah.
But something I kind of wanted to say that is about the kind of the book as a whole is it's so interesting to me because I feel like I appreciated this book way more now than I did when I read it
Oh,
years
interesting.
ago. Yeah. And I think it was because of the darker elements in it. And when I say darker,
Okay.
like literally Aerin goes through the ringer. Like,
She does,
yeah,
yeah.
Harry did, but like Aerin literally died multiple times.
Yeah.
And she fought hard for everything that she like had. And it's actually a very different story from Harry's in
Right.
general because we see her train and she's not necessarily supposed to because of societal things and stuff. But she literally trains from a young age, works through things. She literally is almost like she's almost like a I love the part where she's trying to so when she's trying to do the fire repellent uh stuff that she's making because for some clarification that you don't get when I was reading the summary,
Right.
when she's really sick, which is because she ate this special plant that there's like certain history behind it and stuff that I won't fully go into here. But so there's like this special plant. It's actually really poisonous, and even people who could handle it don't just eat it. And she did because she has a terrible cousin, etc. And it like made her violently ill and weak for a long time. And during some of that time, she'd been in the library doing some reading and found this like
Mm,
random recipe. And she's like, I'm gonna try this and see what happens. She spent literally like 2 years experimenting with
yeah.
this. And it was like very much like inventor slash scientist, like doing trial and error stuff kind of a
Yeah.
vibe, which I really loved. And then she also did similar stuff when she was like trying to find ways. Because one of the things with one of the big other characters in the story is Talat, who's a
Yeah.
horse. And he has a very big
Best boy.
personality. He is best boy. Like he has a huge personality. He was originally her father's horse, and he still remembers that aspect of it.
Mm,
And I spoke of him being bitter. And while yes, you don't always attribute that to a horse, this is a fantasy setting, and animals have a lot more personality than they always do
right. Yeah.
in life. In this case, like he remembers being the king's horse, and now he can't do any of this stuff because he had this like mortal wound, and it like was really hard on him. But she came in, and she also this is the time when she was sick, so she also wasn't doing super well. So it's almost
Mm,
like they bonded in this moment
yeah.
after that and stuff. And so like she does experiments with him and like learning to ride him and all that kind of stuff. So it's just interesting that we get to see the process of her doing that hard work to become what
Yeah.
she is. And then even later in the book when she's fighting I don't remember how to say his name. It's her uncle. He has a really weird name. It's like Ada something or whatever.
Mm,
And
I
she's
don't
fighting
remember.
her. Yeah, it's like super weird. But like she's fighting her uncle and it like a lot of it you sort of feel like she's getting a lot of help. And I'm like, honestly, despite the fact that at that point in the story she's not fully human anymore, she's still just a woman.
Right.
And she didn't have any of the training that this man did, or even her teacher, Luth, has, or any of that kind of stuff. And she had to get a lot of help from Gaunteron. And so it's like, even in those moments, it felt like the fact that she was getting help, it was also earned because she'd done
Yeah.
all of the work before all of this and stuff. So that's something I think I really appreciate about Aerin. And also, as somebody who struggles with depression and things like that,
Yeah.
watching her go through her cycles of like dealing with those kinds of things, it also was very, I don't want to say it was encouraging, even though she did make it through all of it, actually. It was, in some ways it was, but it was also just like it was you connected with the story more, I think is what I was like feeling with this and stuff because I
Yeah.
kind of got some of where her cycles were coming from. While yes, I've never been in a battle with a dragon or a mad mage or any of that kind of stuff and had to try to survive that, like
Speak for
I've been
yourself.
through I have you, Caitlin? I wasn't aware of this.
All I said is speak for yourself.
Okay. But yeah, so it just like all of those things that Aerin had gone through, because some of it was her childhood stuff. And while
Yeah.
I wasn't bullied by cousins as a child, I like definitely understand some of that having just people not be in your corner and
Yeah.
talk poorly about you and things. And even though they have no solid evidence except for they don't like you or they like don't like some
Right.
part of you because of what you represent or whatever. So it's like there's a lot of connections with that. And also, I've come to, while I don't like the horror genre, just me personally most of the
Yeah.
time, there's a few exceptions here or there, but like generally I don't. I have enjoyed darker story elements in some ways as I've gotten older,
Okay.
to a degree. So the kind of like ethereal, dark tone that this book had, I think spoke to me more than it would have
Hmm.
that it did when I first originally read it and everything.
Okay.
So that's just something I thought that was interesting. And
Yeah.
then talking about a really big part of the book that we've talked about previously, her relationship with two romantic interests in her life and
Right.
everything. And I personally, after reading all of it, am in no way like she should have been with one or the other or should have chosen between one or the other
Okay.
because I do like the way the story went about it was that there was two parts to her at the end. She is not immortal
Hmm.
fully anymore, but there's still a part of her that was attached to her mortality originally. And
Yeah.
this isn't exactly the way that it's described, but it's almost like that original aspect of her humanity more or less. I don't want to say humanity because she's still a human technically, even though she's immortal, like she still has
Right.
humanity. But just like her earthiness, that's not a right way to put it either, but like her grounded kind of part of herself that's attached to her past and also to the present of the people that are still alive during that time, that part is for her kingdom and for
Hmm.
Tor. And her otherness, her immortality and everything is for her time with Luth
Right.
and we talked about, you mentioned, and I think we both had that Mandela effect thing of we thought that she'd mentioned going back to him at the end. Like we
Yeah.
had like, yes, they went back to it. But I think we really latched on to that the one of the lines where it was like they'll see each other again, basically.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of what happened is my assumption. Because this isn't the first time I've read one of her books and thought there was more to it than that. Because one of her other books that also has a very dark tone and deals with some really hard things was Deerskin. And I remember reading
Okay.
that a couple of years ago. It's like recently within the last like 5 years, I feel like. And I was reading it and I thought like, whoa, I misremembered some really things. And I just feel like it's because Robin McKinley's writing is so like I I don't want to say mystical is the only word that's coming to my brain right now.
Okay.
But like that's kind of the vibe that a lot of her stuff gives that I can remember from the things that I've read of hers.
Yeah.
There's because there's some other stuff that I don't remember as much. But so that's like the vibe you get a lot of the time. So I feel it definitely leads to you not fully remembering certain stuff in certain
Interesting.
ways and the way she does her prose and stuff. So that's honestly one of my thoughts about it. And then, oh crap, there was one other thing that really was a big thing for my, oh, I'll try to remember it and everything. But so yeah, those are some of my really big thoughts about this book and kind of how it spoke to me this time around
Yeah.
and how I've actually connected with the text more now that I've lived more life essentially up to this
Yeah.
point.
I love that.
Yeah, it was definitely very eye-opening reading
Yeah.
that last night because I literally finished it like the last little bit
Right.
last night before we are recording today and everything. So it's very fresh in my mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. I love what you said about the, like, I guess representations of depression
Mm,
in this because I don't think I necessarily caught that when I was younger.
No,
Um,
yeah, same.
so to see that and to be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I understand what's being said here now. Or I guess the like having a representation of that. It's like, oh, okay, wow, that's really
Yeah.
interesting. Um, I thought it was interesting that um again we have a character who is sort of caught between two worlds.
Yeah.
Um, with Aaron's mother being from the north, which are the enemies and like longtime enemies of the people of Damar.
Which
Um,
something I thought was interesting, that assumption that she is from the North is fully a Damarian thing and not something at any point does Luth ever say about her.
yeah, he
They just
does.
said that he said that she was from the North because I don't remember that.
I thought so. I thought like because her uncle is also from the north.
It doesn't say that he's from the North either, it just says he's there.
Huh. Okay, maybe
That
she's not.
was that was the thing that I kind of stood out to me, and I could have missed a sentence or whatever. So if anybody's reading this and you've read the Hero and the Crown, you're like, oh no, it does say that. I'm totally okay with being wrong with that and stuff. But my impression as I got towards the end is that her being from the North was fully a thing. Like, I don't think she was born in the North necessarily, is what it is my thing. I think she may have come from the North because that's where her brother had been at that point and stuff.
Mm,
So that was just one of my things with
okay.
that. I thought at the end.
My thought was that she was actually from the north, just because like I'm
Which
pretty
again,
sure.
it's yeah, like the other thing that's mentioned by Luth is that like there is Northern blood in especially the what's it called? In the royal line because like
Okay, yeah.
the gift like a lot of some of the gift aspects do come from that. So it's not like this
Well,
but the Damarians don't want to
didn't he say that like the people of the North and the Demarians share a common ancestor?
something like that. Yeah, that was what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is she's still in a way caught between two worlds.
Yes.
Whether or not her mother is actually from the North, I guess I could be wrong about that. Um, she's still caught between these two worlds, and
Yeah.
especially at the end with her being not quite mortal. Um,
Yeah.
I do wonder if maybe I read like maybe there's a short story out there about her returning to Luth, or maybe what had happened is because during the Blue Sword, we know that Luth knew Aerin to some degree, and
Yeah.
also after Harry is up on the mountain and drops a mountain on the army, Jack is up. He's the first one up to see her, I think. And
Yeah.
then he mentions he sees a flash of red off in the forest, and when he looks, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of this implication, especially with Aerin at the end of Here in the Crown being not quite human, or not, sorry, not quite mortal. She's something more than that. I
Yeah.
think there's the implication that Aerin is actually still around, and Luth, both in both books, he says how he does have other people living up on the mountain
Mm.
with him, but they're very shy.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, at least in the Blue Sword, if Aerin is one of those people that lives up on the mountain with him,
Yeah.
and she's just off doing magical girl things, I guess. So yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. I loved did you call him Talat?
That's what
Is
I
that how you said?
said in my head. I
Okay.
again don't know if that's the right way to how to say it, but
I don't know. I was called him Talat. Um, but that's just me. Talat works. Um, he was a great character. I love that at every chance. Well, first of all, she has to woo him, I guess.
yeah.
Um, but at every other chance, or after he has wooed her. Sorry, not he has wooed her. She's wooed him, but sort of mutual wooing.
Yeah.
He's gravely concerned for her, and he's always
Oh,
like, "No,
absolutely.
I'm a part of this. We're going together. We're going to do this together."
Yep.
And when she goes to defeat her uncle. Um, and she can't bring to how'd you okay, I forgot it again.
Say it the way that you said it in your head, because that's better, I
Talos?
feel like. That's the whole point of reading books. A lot of times we're never gonna say certain names, right? So say it the way that feels
Talit?
best for you. Yeah.
Okay. Um, he like tries to climb the mountain with her, but he
Mm,
can't. He can't go.
yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. Also, speaking of the mountain, as or the tower, I thought it was a really clever prose idea to have her
Mm,
feel like it's taking a long time to climb the tower and make
yeah.
some comment about how she's the god who climbs.
Yeah.
Um, and then she's fighting her uncle, whatever, and she's like, "Oh, now I'm the god who falls because I just
Yeah.
feel like I'm falling for a really long time." And she lands, and all of a sudden, like the actual landscape of where she's at is just completely different.
Yep.
And she's like, "Oh, that's weird," and you're like, "Huh, that's really weird." And then Luth finds her and is just like, "Girl, you just traveled through time. Like you were
Yeah.
climbing for a long time and you were falling for a long time."
Yeah.
And so, actually, yes, you are
He,
not in your time.
yeah, and he states he had to drag her back in
Yep.
time
Yep.
again.
And then
Yeah.
they have to continue dragging back in time to, you know what I mean? Like that's just really fascinating. Also,
Yeah.
so many questions about Luth and about his past, where he's from, how he has all this
Yeah.
power, all those things. Who is his master? Just so many
Yeah.
questions.
That
Um,
actually ties in with the thing I forgot earlier of
mhm,
what I wanted to mention. And one of the things that she saw, because when you mentioned she wakes up and is like all different, she's stuck there for like a day
yeah,
in that bit before she comes back and is able to like find her animal army and then Luth eventually.
yeah,
And during at some point between when she fall is I think finished falling and then all of that, and I can't remember exactly in that scenario, she sees stuff that happens.
mhm,
One of the things we know she sees is Harry.
yeah, yep,
And
yep,
very distinctly we know it's Harry because of the way she's described, and also she has Narconon with her
yeah,
because it's a green-eyed cat. But then there's two other things that are described that I have no frame of reference for. One of them is a dark-haired girl, very sad-looking dark-haired girl. And then the other one is these two gentlemen talking to each other, and one's name is Tommy and the other name is Leo.
yeah,
And something I do know is that there's like 4 or 5 short stories that were written that were set in
right.
Damar. And so I'm like, are those references to some of the short stories, or are they stories that never got fruition, kind of like I've been talking about with the Blue
Mm,
Sword? But I have to like look into the short stories because some of them are in other things, so that it's a little bit
right.
hard to like find them and stuff. So that was another part I wanted to mention since you just brought that whole bit up.
Yeah. Well, I also know that as I was like doing some Wikipedia searching, because I was looking to
Mhm.
see did I absolutely imagine Aerin and Luth ending
Oh
up
yeah.
together and like that whole scene. Um, I discovered that there was in one of her other stories, I don't remember exactly which one it was. Um, it's implied that it's in the same world as Damar.
Oh my gosh. Did it say which one it was?
It did say which one it was. I just don't remember which one it was. We can do a quick
Oh.
Wikipedia search though.
We'll have to look because it bothered me so much because so backtracking a little bit, one of other Robin McKinley's works, I remember that. I remember reading one of her things. I'm like, oh, this one's connected to Damar, but it's not set in Damar. It's completely somewhere else, but it's mentioned and everything. But I thought that had been in Deerskin, and when I read it again a couple of years ago, as far as I could remember, it was never mentioned. And I'm like, oh, I must have really remembered that wrong. But if it was in one of the other books, which one was it now? That's gonna bother me. I have to try to find it.
Don't worry, I'll find it.
Okay. So yeah, a lot of Robin McKinley stuff, like just her prose is very interesting.
Mhm.
And something I mentioned in the last story is we spend a lot of time in like it's flashbacks, but not quite the way that they're done. And that actually happens a lot at the beginning of this book too, where we kind of bounce between like we don't even bounce between. We start out in like present times basically, and then we hop to a whole many chapters descriptions of Aerin growing up in her childhood and everything, and like
Right.
then we're growing into a young woman. So it's just, and then we get back to the quote unquote present time, which is a little bit before she goes to fight Mauer. And so like it's just very interesting Robin McKinley's writing style. And it's been a long time since I've read most of her stuff except for Deerskin, which again was her most recent thing. And the most recent thing of hers that I'd read. And so I'm like, I kind of want to read more of her stuff again or reread it because I've read basically all of her stuff to kind of get an idea of her writing again.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, she's got a lot of stuff, so that's the
she
cool
does.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Problem is I don't remember like the I don't remember the Wikipedia like chain that I followed.
Mm.
You know what I mean? To get from to find out which. Oh, okay, here it is. It's Spindle's End.
Oh,
At
okay.
one
That
point,
makes a little bit more sense.
Damar and the character of Harry Soul are mentioned as historical events, though from a different country. The events
Oh,
of McKinley's Deerskin are also referenced obliquely, as the Queen is said to come from a country best known for the fleet hounds bred by its king and queen.
that must be why I connected the two of them
Yeah,
because they were both mentioned. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
That's
That's
wild. Okay.
that's what I thought. I was like, I know it's mentioned, but that is a future thing, even from um the Blue Sword. Like that was a Blue Sword was a historical thing for
Yeah.
whoever. Um,
I wonder, I can't remember well all of her. I have a number of her works still,
you
and I
can go.
haven't read any of them for a long time, and I need to go back. One of the ones
Yeah,
I really loved hers was The Outlaws of Sherwood. It was her take on Robin Hood, but we'll
yeah,
talk about that maybe another time or whatever. So,
yeah.
but
Well, I
yes.
also realized I got I think I always thought that Robin McKinley was a part of the Once Upon a Time series.
Oh,
So in my
okay.
head, they're like she's just one of those authors,
Yeah.
but she's not. She's actually completely separate.
Yeah.
Which confused me until I was because I was Wikipediaing things. I'm like, oh, I've definitely read that. Wasn't that a part of this one series that I read? And I was like, oh,
Mm,
no, they must have had a different one.
yeah.
Um, so I thought that was really interesting.
That is very
Um,
interesting.
it's just what happens when the wires get crossed in my head. It's also what happens when
Yeah.
you read a lot and
Yep.
you get really confused.
Yep. I feel that.
So because I definitely thought now that I'm quickly, I thought the Outlaws of Sherwood were, excuse me, was the same setting as whichever one in the Once Upon a Time series is the Robin Hood.
That one I remember very distinctly, knowing that it's not the same thing and stuff, because it was Jack and the Beanstalk mixed with Robin Hood.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But Outlaws of Sherwood's very, very different.
Yeah. So it's just crazy. It's how my brain works. Um, okay, here's my other thought
Yeah.
about the Hero and the Crown. Back to the Hero and the Crown. Harry, right? You know
Yes.
Harry. Harry's from the
Yeah.
Blue Sword. Harry's got blonde hair. She's very
Yep.
tall. Who else do we know has blonde hair and is very tall?
Are we making a reference to Kel?
No, Brianna, in the actual book series that this character is from.
Oh, I see where this is going. Luth.
Yes, here's my theory. Here's my fan theory, okay?
Okay.
My fan theory
Yes.
is that Aerin returns to Luth. And
Hmm.
I feel like that's not just a fan theory, it's implied.
Yeah.
Okay. And then some 500 years-ish later, maybe it would be about 400 years because it was Harry's great grandmother, I think. That was
Yeah.
whatever. So however many years later, one of their descendants, Luth and Aerin's descendants. Oh, this is so interesting because does Aerin have children with Luth? I think Harry is descendant of Luth and Aerin is what I think.
Mm. Which
Um,
honestly is better than, okay, something we didn't talk about, Kayla.
oh yeah, it's probably important for us to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah. So I want to clarify that
Yeah.
happens. So something that is talked about, one of Harry, not Harry, sorry, Aaron's other love interest is Tor. And the way that I described him in said summary that I did earlier was as her childhood friend slash he is supposed to be the future king.
We
Generally, you're
forgot a
like, that doesn't
salient
make as much
detail.
sense. Yeah, we forgot a very important detail, is that it is heavily implied that he is her cousin.
It's not implied, it's
I,
explicitly
c-
stated.
I don't remember it ever saying, like, it's actually Albrecht, which is Aaron's dad's brother or whatever, but
It
they're
does.
cousins. And I'm like, why? And it's just like, it's also, if you go back to Harry's story, it's also heavily implied that a lot of it's only the royals really that have the gift anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that if, and I'm again, we're kind of going away from your little fan theory with this a little bit and stuff, but then also not at the same time because all of the royals are descended from Aerin and Tor. So like if it's
Mm-hmm.
Aerin and Luth, technically they still are related at the same time. But
Wait, what?
they because Aaron's the common denominator in both lines. If let's
Oh,
say
I
Luke
see. Okay.
kids, yes, that's where I'm going with this. So everybody's cousins for some reason, or whatever. And so I'm just like, why did we do this? Why is this a thing? Why is it like that anytime that I remember fondly a older um writers like fantasy or sci-fi, there's always something weird that happens in it. Anne
Because
McCaffrey, we'll talk about another time. But like
the
it,
80s were a weird time, Brianna.
yeah, I know. It just like I'm like, why did we need to make them cousins? Because that's not always how that works with things and stuff. I know people can be like historically, blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't care. This is fiction. We don't need cousin brothers and sisters and husbands and wives. So yeah, Tor is great, but like they're related to each other apparently.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the best,
No,
but you know, it's what happened. So, yep.
it's
And
what
I mean,
happened.
he was in love with her from a very young age, so
Yeah.
although they're also like 12 years apart or something
What?
stupid like that.
No.
Yes, because the rude cousin was 7 when Aaron was born, and Tor's so they're 10 years apart because Tor was
Okay.
older than her. Tor's older than Galena.
Okay. Sorry. I was remembering a comment and I did the wrong number in my head. It was a later comment. Something about him being like older looking than somebody who wasn't even 40 and my brain said 30 in my brain. And so I was like, that doesn't add up. But no, you're right.
Yes. He because they were children together, but like
Yep.
barely because
Yeah. That's
he
another thing. And this is still a prevalent thing in any fantasy sci-fi for some reason. Even women writing women make the dude 10 plus years older
Brianna,
than the
you read
girl.
romance with like non-humans and humans.
Yeah.
Non-humans who live hundreds of years. Like
Yes.
you can't
Yes,
complain
Galen.
about
Oh,
human
I can
age
complain.
range.
No, I complain so the thing I'm going to clarify with what I'm saying is, though it doesn't bother me as much in here because Aaron and Harry are both over the age of 20. And that's still a
Okay, fair
very
enough.
low bar with all of it because a lot of the time, unfortunately, whether it is in young adult or adult fiction in whatever form it takes, even like romance and stuff, for some reason we always toe the line with them being 18 or 19,
Mm-hmm.
and then said character is over 100 years old or whatever kind of thing you
Mm-hmm.
want to tack on it, or if it's more of a normal, like not normal, more of a contemporary thing, they're like in their 30s or 40s and they're like this 18, 19-year old and stuff.
Yep.
And that is where my line is frustrated with stuff. And there's other sci-fi authors that I know that are more egregious with this. I'm not throwing any
Right, yeah.
shade on Robin McKinley with either of these two stories because I can't remember if it happens in any of your other stuff, but that just happens a lot in things where it's like for some reason the dude is always, oh, not always, but like the dude is usually the person who is twice her age or whatever and things like that. So,
I mean, to be fair, like teenage and like 20s, not good time
no, yeah,
for
poor
men,
choices are often made.
but also usually maturity level is about the same for 30, like men in their 30s and women in their 20s.
Yeah. But then they don't grow out of it and they keep doing the same thing with the same age group, even as they get older.
I mean,
and
hey,
should
it's the
know
same thing
better.
with women too.
I'm not saying women are not complicit with it. It's just unfortunately stories, even when they're written by women, for some reason really tap into that part where it's a younger woman and an older man. I'm not saying
Probably
there isn't like
because
things like that, but
probably because the women writing the stories are just like, well, I would obviously not be a younger man because he's dumb.
sure.
Because you need the lived experience of life to mature and um
But then they're
season
writing these characters who don't
like
know
aged wine.
anything, and they're getting with people who are twice their
Okay,
age.
but
And so
also
I'm
Luth.
like,
I'm saying, okay, Luth.
what
How old is he?
about Luth? We don't
How
know.
we don't. Mystical
I'm
man who's very
I'm
old.
not again referencing the hero's crown and this and stuff.
I know.
I'm not
I'm just
saying like
saying.
there's anything inherently wrong with like the way that they did stuff. Like we're fully aware of these male characters. Neither of them try to pressure her into doing anything with them at any point. It's just they're there to support her
Yep. Because
and
she is the
everything. So
hero
she is the hero.
with the crown. Although actually
With
Tor wears the crown, but
yes, she gives the crown to him.
that's true.
She's the one that found it. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'm done with my rant about age gaps.
But also, Brian, I honestly agree with you because I'm like, why do we need a 15-year age gap between characters? That's unnecessary. Anyway.
Especially when one of the characters is under the age of 20.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
I totally agree with you. I just
Yes,
also like to play devil's advocate.
that's true.
Yeah. So, Brianna, what would you give this as a nostalgia rating?
I think I'm
Oh,
gonna
I'm
give it a
so sorry. Hold on.
four. Oh,
Sorry. Who's your favorite character?
oh,
There's only one right answer.
is your answer to lot?
Yeah, obviously.
Um, man, I don't think that I had a favorite character in this. I'm gonna be super honest.
Wrong answer.
Like, I do think Talat probably is pretty high up there. He has a very distinct personality and everything, but there's nobody that like spoke to me fully. But I do think Aerin,
I mean, horses
honestly,
can't speak, Brianna.
they can't neigh to me to
Mm,
convince
mm.
me for them to be my favorite character.
Don't be
No,
a
I think
naysayer.
oh okay, I'm moving
I'm
on.
so
Uh
proud of myself.
I know you are, and that's why we're gonna move forward. So
Oh,
I think honestly, Aerin was my favorite character in this.
fair
I do
enough.
think it's so interesting how different she is characterized between the Blue Sword and this, because we get this like image of very brash. I don't take any crap from anybody when we see like the glimpses of her in the Blue Sword, but in this she's just a woman who had to deal with
Mm,
a very terrible growing up, not
yeah.
because like there's anything her dad did specifically. It was honestly things that he didn't stop or really like speak into in his own way and stuff. And so like I think it really spoke to me her whole journey in becoming from growing up to this like I am ignored or thought less of because of who I am into I don't give a crap. I'm just gonna live my life and protect my kingdom within the like bounds, blah 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 kind of a thing. So I think Aerin is my favorite character in all of this, honestly.
Yeah.
And Talat is definitely the second best character.
I mean, sure. Second to best. I think I Talat is probably my favorite character just because he's a grumpy old horse, but he's determined. I, I think he's written off because he had a pretty egregious wound and he feels abandoned by his master. Um, but then he bonds with Aerin, and Aaron's like, "Look, we're both wounded because at the time she's still recovering from her poisonous plant outbreak."
Yep.
And I love that their bond. It like he's still his leg is still like lame, you know. She
Yeah.
still has to work it and like pound it to get the muscle moving and force him to work it out. But the fact that he's technically like a disabled horse
Yeah.
never stops him from helping the hero achieve victory, essentially.
Yep.
And I love that Aerin's just like, well, I'm not going to give up on him. Um, this is I feel like here in the Crown and Tamara Pierce's Protector of the Small series are a
Yeah.
bit are comparable a bit. Because obviously Tamara Pierce wrote a whole series where this is just a one-off book. But I'm
Yeah.
talking like Animal Army. Who else do we know? I mean, Dane technically had an Animal Army as well because she's the Wild Mage, but Kel was all about the birds and saving the animals and the cat and the dog in her story. Like I see a lot of similarities between these two things.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was really cool. I also loved, we didn't talk about this very much, but at the end, she does have an animal army. It's a bunch of wild dogs and wild cats,
Yeah.
essentially. And so she ends up saving the day, not with humans, but actually with just a bunch of cats and dogs. And I just love that because
Yeah.
that's so random. It's right up my alley in terms of um animals and all that jazz.
Oh,
Um
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so I think Talat is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Um, I do love Aerin, and I love the journey that she goes on. I love that very much like um Harry didn't have to struggle. You've already said this. She didn't have to struggle as much. Aerin, like, it makes sense why Harry's a hero because of what she accomplished in
Yeah.
defeating Thura and saving Damar. But it makes even more sense why Aerin's a hero because she
Yeah.
had to, in a really real way, earn her hero title
Mm.
and become the dragon killer, become the one who not only defeated little dragons, but also defeated the last great dragon.
Yeah.
She defeated whoever her uncle from wherever who just happened to be in the north. She got the hero's crown back. She saved the kingdom that way, and then she realized, oh, Mars skull is still causing problems, so we need to go destroy it.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just thought that I think Aerin is a really good character. I think for me, Talat would be one, Aerin would be second.
Mm.
Um, Also, one last thing to say about the story is I really loved how in the Blue Sword it was talking about how there's this great battle, and the reason this plane is so flat is because like Tor battled for so long. Like there's this myth that they all mention, and in here in the Crown we get to see that myth come to life, and we
Yeah.
see the battle that happened. It was chaos. It was crazy. And then what happened was they rolled Mars' head out of the castle, and it like rolled downhill, and then um it just like there was this crash explosion, and then all of a sudden this wind came, and it was like a desert wind rather than sort of the tropical wind that you would normally get in Damar. So I just thought it was really cool how they tied that in.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts. Um,
Yeah.
to go back to what I asked you earlier, Brandon, what would you give this
Yeah.
nostalgia rating?
I would give it a 4. It
Yeah,
isn't nostalgia enough because I didn't reread it the same way that I did the Blue Sword.
yeah,
At the time, didn't connect with it as much when I read it. And so
right.
it does not like a full 5, but like something really spoke to me this time around. And sometimes there's stories that I read that I didn't have a history with before that still feel nostalgic.
Yeah,
And I do think it was because I grew up reading Robin McKinley's books,
yeah,
not just the Blue Sword and the Hero's Crown, but like some of her other things. So like it made me feel nostalgic for her writing in general because Robin McKinley hasn't released or written anything as far as I'm aware. I feel like in almost over a decade now.
yeah.
And she's still alive. But around the time that her husband passed, she stopped doing much of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit sad because she'd started a new series that we
Mm-hmm.
won't get to see any fruition with, as far as I'm aware, unless she has somebody set up to like release things after she's passed. But I don't
Yeah,
know because you haven't heard anything, honestly, from her in over a decade. So it it just kind of gives this like interesting vibe that
yeah,
I sort of am very nostalgic for, and I think that's a big part of it for me.
yeah. Trying to look on her website. on her
Mm.
website on Wikipedia. Yeah, I think the last thing she released was in 2013.
Ah, yeah. So it has been over a decade.
Yeah. Wow. Um, there was one like she wrote something for a magazine in 2014.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, but yeah, the rest was all yeah, all before that.
Yeah.
I think for me it's probably a 3.5
Yeah.
because Blue Sword I remember far better.
Yeah.
There are certain things about this that I did remember. I think I read them probably around the same time, but I think I connected more with Harry's story than I did with
Mm.
Aerin's. Also, Corlath is more attractive than Tor. Just saying it, okay?
I agree with that.
He's a much better character. Um, yeah, so I think, and even in the rereading of it, I was super excited to reread The Blue Sword. It's not that I wasn't excited to read Here in the Crown, but it didn't emotionally move me as much as things
Yeah.
from The Blue Sword did. And I think that's because I've read The Blue Sword significantly more times than I've read Here in the Crown.
Yeah.
Um, but it's still really fun. I bought a copy of The Hero and the Crown at a used bookshop a few months ago. And
Mm.
so I'm really looking forward to now owning it and being able to reread it
Yeah.
frequently, like occasionally.
Yeah.
But I definitely think the Blue Sword, because I think gave the Blue Sword a 5, and this one's a 3.5, just because it wasn't as nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
Any other thoughts this fine day?
Um, nope. I think I got all of the stuff that I could think of.
Love it. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Readers Clubhouse. If you like this discussion, you want to hear more, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify basically every other Friday, depending on how Kaytlyn goes with editing. Check the episode description for our socials, and you can join us in the clubhouse next time as we discuss the ancient history of the land of Mossflower.
Mm.
Lord
Back to
Brocktree.
Redwall.
Back to Redwall. Lord Brocktree by Brian Jakes. Woo woo.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.